Sheffield, and I hope you have a lovely time and enjoy the conference. We put together a really nice program for patients, caregivers, and healthcare professionals, as well as researchers. And this is a great platform to bring everyone together. I've been attending these meetings for the last 4 or 5 years, and I've had the privilege to be involved in the organization of these as well. And by far the best experience I've had at a conference in terms of what you learn or take away, because anything that we do as a healthcare professional is to help our patients and their families. So I'm Ali Kuram. I'm the president of this conference, if you like, president for a day, well, 2 days. I'm also the dean of the dental school at the University of Sheffield, and we're very proud to be partners of this conference at the dental school. It's the first time we've had a university partner for this International Head and Neck Cancer Conference. So first of all, I would just like to thank all of our sponsors. Without them, we will not be able to put something like this on and also offer it as a free event. So thanks a lot to the generosity and their compassion. And please be sure that you go and visit their stall and find out about all the exciting developments and products that they've got. One thing I forgot to mention is that there are no fire alarms planned today, so if it goes off, that's the real thing. So run for your life. But we do have these fire exits just next to the stairs. We just use them to head out, and the assembly point is outside in the concourse. The toilets are just outside the room, and you go out on the left just down the stairs. So these are the sort of hashtags for Twitter, so make sure you engage, and anything you sort of like or want to tweet about, please feel free to do so. Also on Instagram, and it helps with the visibility. It also helps to spread the message and raise awareness of head and neck cancers at the same time. So this is truly a global conference, and it's becoming more and more global every year. So we've got people from 35 different countries attending today, which is amazing. And pretty much all of you have paid from your own pocket to be here. Of course, being in Sheffield, you don't need a second invitation, but it just is a testament to all the work that Chris and Sharon and the Swallows have put together over the years in terms of the conference and what it delivers, what it means to not just the patients and their families, but also to healthcare professionals and researchers.
Hello?
Chris, where the hell are you? You're supposed to be at the meeting. You need to get here. Hurry up. Just get ready. Get here now.
Oh, blast.
When I wake up in the morning.
And a very good morning to you all. You're listening to Sheffield Today, the greatest station playing to the greatest city. The sun is shining, it's a beautiful day, so get yourself up and at it. Let's enjoy what Sheffield has to offer.
Then I look at you, and the world's alright with me. Just one look at you.
By the way, in case you didn't know, the Swallows are in town this week. Sheffield is the proud host of this year's Swallows International Head and Neck Cancer Conference, coming from the world-famous Octagon Centre. The conference brings together patients, caregivers and health professionals in a unique environment. Preparations are well underway, and I know the team are very busy, so it's guaranteed to be another huge success. Here's a tune everyone in Sheffield should be familiar with. And we're dedicating it to anyone making their way to International Head and Neck Cancer Conference. By gum.
Hi Chris, we're just about to do our conference intro routine.
What, dancing?
It's not just dancing, Chris. We're doing the full Monty. Don't you know Sheffield's famous for it?
But Sheffield is the city that invented steel.
Nah.
It's got 2 top football teams.
Nah.
The World Snooker Final.
Nah.
Oh, okay then. Shall I get my tackle out?
No! I'm not sure it's for you, Chris. And it's for family viewing, so we're just pretending.
But I've got a fantastic body and a massive...
Curtis, don't say another word.
I was going to say a massive talent for dance.
You can't dance, you can't shuffle, you've got 2 left feet, and as for the rest of your shortcomings...
I'll show them.
Oh, wow. Right, guys, here's your scripts. Thank you. Have a little look through. Yeah? You'll see I've made a couple of changes. Easy to understand, yeah? Yeah. Probably the next bit, that same page.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very hot welcome to the International Head and Neck Cancer Conference 2024.
Glad that's over. having it for 2 years. But I think it's a very serious subject, head and neck cancer, and we know how much patients and their families suffer in the journey they go through. But what this conference aims to do is basically just have a bit of a laugh as well. So we'll talk about our problems, but we'll also try and keep it light-hearted and have you on board and basically just be like a family. And it's always a tradition to start the conference with something like this, a bit light-hearted, just to break the ice. So I hope you enjoyed it. And this was the team. This was the Del Monte, basically. So Chris, who's the founder and CEO of the Swallows. Then of course me. They've got Paul's name wrong. Paul Hankin. It should be Paul Hankinson. And Paul is the vice president with me, and he's one of our trainees in pathology. And then Ben, who's dressed as Batman, he's a charity advocate. And Phil Paramore, who's a charity patron and the timekeeper, and he's very strict with his time. He's like a ninja. So if you're a speaker, watch out. You don't want to be on the wrong side of Phil.
The Swallows Head and Neck Cancer Support Group is a truly global charity with connections on every continent.
Dedicated to patients and caregivers, this once humble charity was born out of necessity. Back in 2011, Chris Curtis was a successful marketing executive with a wide circle of friends and an appetite for life.
After finding a lump on his neck, in May that year Chris went to see a specialist. He was told he had cancer. On hearing this devastating news, Chris's life went into a downward spiral of confusion, despair, and depression.
His wife Sharon was the one left to pick up the pieces, becoming his caregiver, his therapist, and the family breadwinner. She ran the home, brought up the children, and held down a full-time job.
She managed his peg feeding, along with arranging all his radiotherapy appointments. He stopped communicating, he stopped seeing his friends, and he lost 12 stone in weight.
After visiting a local meeting group, Chris was disillusioned, so he decided to apply his own skills and energy and create something more about support and awareness. The Swallows is now one of the fastest growing charities in the UK and was given the Queen's Award for voluntary work. This was presented to Chris and Sharon at Buckingham Palace.
The Swallows was set up to allow patients and caregivers access to support and help right at the point they need it.
There are monthly meetings around the UK and internationally for both patients and caregivers.
They offer an opportunity to chat to people in similar circumstances and often feature guest speakers. They also look at available medication for improving quality of life.
The Swallows offers a 24/7 helpline for patients and caregivers by calling 07504 725 059.
It isn't a call centre, it's a live conversation with dedicated, caring people offering practical or emotional support.
There's even a dedicated Swallows app, designed directly for both patients and caregivers.
It features a personal record of symptoms, related articles, recipes and tips.
Plus, a direct link with caregivers and a health professional team.
The Swallows also provide support boxes containing market-leading medical products to send out to patients. In many cases, patients can contact the Swallows direct to request their own box, which will help with everything from dry mouth, mucositis, or other oral health issues.
Face-to-face meetings are also available to both patients and caregivers online.
If it's felt that someone needs additional and immediate support, the Swallows team will arrange an online meeting and make that contact to patients, caregivers, or to their families.
The Swallows have also raised tens of thousands of pounds for hospitals to buy vital equipment,
such as robotics for head and neck cancer surgery or an early detection scanner. They regularly support head and neck cancer teams at hospitals up and down the country and across the globe, whether it's advanced upskilling training to help care for patients or caregivers, manage and fund local groups, or helping to purchase specialist equipment, the Swallows is always there to help and support.
Did you know there are so many ways you can help with fundraising efforts to help the Swallows charity? As an individual or company, you can make a real difference by raising money for a very good cause. Every penny counts.
And now it's even easier to donate with the new, simple, safe and unique QR code. And don't forget, the annual International Head and Neck Cancer Conference.
Each year, hundreds of patients and caregivers gather to see guest speakers, discuss key topics and innovations in treatment.
The Swallows are a leading UK charity with the Royal Seal of Approval.
It's a truly global operation with connections on every continent.
It gives patients and caregivers support and help right at the point they need it.
The Swallows Head and Neck Cancer Support Charity.
That wasn't me, by the way. So you can see this was just a very sort of quick whistle-stop tour of all the work that the Swallows have done. And I'm very proud to be a part of that as a trustee and help them. But yeah, none of this would be possible if you guys weren't engaging. And before I pass over to Chris to say a few words, I also wanted to say that for the healthcare professionals in the room, this event is CPD approved. So if you go to the School of Clinical Dentistry, Seoul, there are sign-in sheets. So please make sure you do sign in, and then we can email you your CPD certificates. So without much further ado, I'll invite Chris to the stage to say a few words and formally open the conference.
First thing I have to say is thank you to my fellow dancers. That generally was the first time we've been on stage together. So well, I don't think we've done too bad really, considering that, you know, it was a bit of a laugh, but I've been dreading it. When John put the film together, his remit every year is to embarrass me and the president. So, and then we bring in some friends as well that normally like being embarrassed as well. But I think that's the furthest we've, apart from Nottingham, I was caught in the shower with a rubber duck. Anyone that was there, I was caught with a rubber duck. But John, our film guy, put all that together, and I think a round of applause goes to John. So thank you for coming. This is going to be one of our busiest conferences we have. This is our 9th year now. Next year is obviously our 10th anniversary, which will be bigger and bigger again, but this is our 9th anniversary. 2 months ago we had to close the door for bookings, so we got sold out, 2 months to go, and people have been desperate to get here. We've still got people arriving, but we don't let them in once we start. Then they have to wait, and then they'll come in when we allow them to come in. So, but yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy it. We can't do this as a charity without our sponsors, so all the sponsors are in this room. I know Alice said it, but without their help and support and paying for stands out there, we cannot put this on for you guys. We can't have speakers come in. We can't do all the work. It costs a lot of money, as you can imagine, to put a venue on like this. So our sponsors, when you go out there at breaks, please take the time to go on their stands and give them that appreciation, because without it, we wouldn't be able to do this for you. We are a charity at the end of the day. It's not a corporate event. You know, it is a charity. It's a free event for you to come. I know some people were desperate to come, so they've actually paid to come as well, so, which is the first ever. But, you know, it is a free event in general, so please go and support those guys. All the speakers have come at their own expense. So again, you know, listen to them, appreciate them. I keep going on it about charity, we can't do it without their help. Ali is now a trustee of the charity, which is fantastic. The charity now is a truly international charity. We have got people from all over the world here today, health professionals. So again, you know, don't just think that the health professional next to you is from England. It could be from, you know, another part of the world. Tomorrow, if she turns up, we've got the health minister from New Zealand coming to see me and Sharon about taking our services over to New Zealand. So again, you know, it's from us now. I got diagnosed 12 or 13 years ago. From that day, and I know Joe and Julie's in the audience somewhere, I don't know where they are, But without those guys, I wouldn't be stood here today. So to have those in the audience is very special for me. So thank you for coming all the way from Blackpool. I hope you're proud to see what's come out of those days when I got diagnosed, where I thought I was the biggest baby in the world. I took it out on Sharon, my wife. I was the worst patient. I think I was fantastic, but obviously I've been told since I was the worst patient. And yeah, we've come a long way. And I was only saying to someone last night, I wish that I'd got given my cancer 10 years earlier, because I'd have more time to do the work I want to do in this field of head and neck cancer. And, you know, while I'm still on this planet walking, this is what I'll do until those days finish, because it's so important that health professionals and the general public hear our voice. And, you know, that's what I want to bring to make change. I can't change my journey, as much as it was one of the best journeys I had with the health professionals. We can all change tomorrow's patient's journey by working together. And that's what I'm hoping that this conference brings, that you all start talking out there. Don't just go around in your little groups, try and talk to other people, because you'll learn a lot, and listen to the speakers. So that's all I'm going to say. Please enjoy the 2 days. I've been told this is my only one time on the stage, because as you know, I'm very shy, I don't like to talk. So I'm going to leave now, but please have a great 2 days. I hope you enjoyed the opening film. It was a bit of a laughter, bit of tongue-in-cheek, and yeah, just have a great 2 days, guys, and I'll hand over the rest of the 2 days to Ali. So, well done, guys. Thank you very much.
Okay, so it gives me great pleasure to invite our first speaker. So the first session is about preventing head and neck cancer across Europe and how policy and policymakers are helping. And we are really pleased to have Daniel Kelly with us, who is a cancer advocate and has helped change the policies and the landscape of many cancers, and now looking at oropharyngeal throat cancer as well. And he's, correct me if I'm wrong, part of the HPV action group as well. I think Vice President, if I'm right. Thank you very much for joining us. Please.
Thank you very much for that amazing welcome. It's great to be here, and it's great to be part of your story, which was so inspiring this morning to hear about swallows. I do know about swallows, and I've been amazed at how the impact of this group has grown. And it just shows you, when you have a group of really committed individuals, what a difference you can make to people's lives. It really is inspiring, awe-inspiring. So it's a real pleasure to be here today. And I'm bringing you a message really from colleagues in Europe. As you can tell, I'm not local, but I am heavily involved in the European Cancer Organisation, which has been in existence for well over 30 years. We're based in Brussels, and the focus of the organisation is to work with patient groups, with policymakers, with pharmaceuticals, with importantly in terms of HPV, with young people. Because although HPV in terms of oropharyngeal, head and neck cancers tends to impact older people, and you know more than I do about that, if we can prevent it in younger generations, then much of what we're worried about and concerned about improving disappears, really. So I think it's a message, I think, of hope, and it will take change, and it will take greater awareness, and that's the job that we try to do across Europe. And I'm going to tell you about a couple of projects that we've been involved in Eastern Europe. When we think about Europe, I think we think it's a kind of homogeneous group of countries. And what I've learned is that the European continent is really wide and varied. And, you know, us at this side of the continent, when you look to the eastern countries, to the Balkans, we can see huge differences in terms of cancer awareness, cancer prevention, cancer outcomes. So our continent, the European continent, has a huge array of challenges, and that's where we come in. So the European Cancer Organization aims to address some of those challenges, and so because we're in Brussels, we work closely with the European Commission and we impact on some of their work, and I'll tell you a little bit more about some of that. So as I say, we're promoting cancer awareness, and we are in the business, if you like, of making it very clear that many cancers that we face now are largely preventable. Cancer is not inevitable now. Head and neck cancers, many of them, are not inevitable. They are not something that we have to just learn to cope with and improve the treatments of, although we have to do that also. But it's also something about prevention and stepping in before these cancers manage to take a grasp on people's lives. So you can see this year we were involved in we have been more active, I think, in terms of cervical cancer, because as you know, there's been clear awareness between HPV infection, cervical cancer. That's been an established link for a number of years. But I think there's been a less clear relationship between the HPV exposure and later, especially squamous cell oropharyngeal carcinomas. And so we've stepped in to try and raise awareness of that and to educate both the public, but importantly health providers, about the importance of vaccination. Because without HPV vaccination, I'm afraid the incidence of the cancers that you're interested in are really on an upward trajectory that is quite alarming, really. There was a report just out from the University of Sheffield last month, I'm sure some of you will be aware of that, done for the Department of Health in England. And it showed some alarming trends for your cancers especially in terms of at-risk groups. And we can see that poverty and lack of health provision, lack of awareness play a part in that incidence. So if you haven't seen it, I would recommend you do take a look at the Sheffield report, which I had a look at last night, and it really is quite alarming in terms of what we're going to face in the future. So during Head and Neck Cancer Awareness Week this year, we at the European Cancer Organization, we did take part, and we spotlighted the importance of early detection, timely treatment. I'll say a little bit more about that, and especially prevention. As I say, these cancers really are within our grasp to stop and to prevent, as we've seen in my own country, in Scotland, in the girls who were vaccinated from 2008 with the HPV vaccine. When we look at the cohort now, none of those girls have developed cervical cancer. That's an amazing outcome. That's a whole generation of young women who are not going to face cervical cancer treatment. So I am personally very proud of that, and we're meeting next week in Edinburgh, the International Papillomavirus Society big congress, and Scotland's success will be up there at the very beginning. And that's about policymakers taking the evidence and making the changes in public health to protect their young people. So in Scotland, the government at that time made a decision to vaccinate girls. They're now also vaccinating boys, and we can say more about that in terms of the cancers you're interested in. But certainly for the girls in Scotland from that cohort, cancer really, we're talking now about elimination. And what a fantastic place to be. So we could be talking about similar goals in terms of head and neck or pharyngeal in particular. So these are realities now, and we need to be ready to advocate. I also think we need to be very aware of the reality of where the problem now lies for head and neck cancers. About 30% are in women, and almost 70% are in men. So it's now a boy's problem. And a surgeon, head and neck surgeon, said this to me recently. I think it's a boy's problem. So we need to think about what does this say to us? What do these figures say to us in terms of what we need to do to protect boys? We've heard about cervical cancer in girls, but what about protecting the boys of the future, the young men, the older men, who are going to be increasingly diagnosed with these cancers? It's known that HPV infection, and that's where my focus comes from, is a major, significant causative factor in promoting this process of oncogenesis. There's lots of different stages in the journey, but it's known that HPV exposure is a significant and preventable part of the process. We also know that people diagnosed with HPV-related oropharyngeal tend to do better. You probably are aware of that. So there's something about the type of cancer that is developed here that makes it, to know someone's HPV status is a good predictor of outcome of disease treatment. The people who tend to be negative, HPV negative, tend to be younger. They tend not to smoke and tend not to drink or very little. So the idea that if we know people's HPV status, we can somehow use that to predict and to direct the treatment, I think is a very important stage in our knowledge. And there is a very strong economic argument that I'll come on to. We can't afford, as a country, to ignore the science around HPV exposure. I was at a seminar recently in UCL, and I was listening to Professor Lou Schilling, who some of you will know, a surgeon, who was telling us about advances in surgical techniques for head and neck cancer. And it really was mind-blowing how the science of surgical innovation is targeting more precisely the cancers that need, the nodes, for instance, that need to be removed, and the nodes that can remain. Because obviously the more intervention surgically that we do, the more impact that has on quality of life. So the science of surgical precision in head and neck cancers is just incredible. And what they're doing there around being able to detect the nodes that are dangerous, do need to be removed, and the ones, as I say, down the line that can be remain and perhaps treated through radiation or surgery. And then also we've got all sorts of other scientific advances that are around gene sequencing and in the future targeting therapy for these cancers. So we're moving from an era where the cancer would tend to be blasted with radiation in the past, or huge excisions, down to now much more precise intervention. All of that relies on knowing the cause of the cancer, the genetics behind the cancer, and the more precise amount of risk associated with that cancer. The economic arguments I've touched on, but I don't think they can be ignored. There's the scientific evidence, there's the economic evidence. And we can see that there is a need to, I think, invest in research. I'm sure your charity would support this, that we need to invest in treatments around understanding HPV cancers. HPV is an amazing pathogen. It doesn't just cause cervical cancer, head and neck cancer. It's also implicated in all sorts of, there's vaginal cancer, there's rectal cancer, cancers that cause such misery to people. Penile cancer, there's a huge problem of penile cancer in South America at the moment. So that's where the argument for vaccinating boys comes alive, because HPV is not gender specific. It goes across and can cause all sorts of problems, head and neck cancer being just one of those. So we need to look at the costs of head and neck cancer, and I read one estimate that says that in men, and that's the group in which it is rising exponentially at the moment, we could be talking up to £40 billion by 2040 in terms of lost employment and treatment costs if we don't intervene and help to prevent some of these cancers, especially in the male population. I've mentioned the Scottish case, Scottish success story in terms of cervical cancer. I'm very proud of that, as I say. But we now need to understand whether that vaccination program that is now introduced for boys, and I hope all of you who have sons and nephews and grandsons will encourage those boys to take this vaccine, because it will protect them against all sorts of cancers in the future. But we now need to understand, for instance, in Scotland, whether the rates of head and neck cancers will also drop over the next 20 to 30 years in the cohorts of boys who have been vaccinated, I think, since about 2015. So there's much now to learn from the science, epidemiology, following the figures, looking at the benefits, because people who are vaccine hesitant will often use an argument that vaccines somehow are harmful for people. There's also arguments, and we've seen this in my work across Europe, some cultural beliefs are that somehow this is a bit of a passport for young people to perhaps make them more promiscuous, that it's a bit of a, it provides a key for them to engage in sex at an early age. I don't think there's any evidence for that at all. Young people are very smart, they live on their phones, they're more aware of things sometimes than we are, and I think they understand if we explain to them the benefits of being vaccinated. So our HPV Action Network, just to tell you a little bit about that, we're very proud of what's been achieved in the past 5 years. I'm vice chair of this, co-chair with Professor Margaret Stanley from Cambridge, and we've worked very hard to influence this stage in Europe around bringing together the expertise and shaping through working with young people, working with governments, working with the minister in the EU, and really to share best knowledge, to advocate, to argue, to come to meetings like this, and to tell people about the real risks of HPV infection for us all. Anyone interested in knowing more, there is a web page, lots of information on there. There's lots of reports, lots of downloadable content. And we're very proud of having done things like influencing the European Beating Cancer Plan, which we don't have a cancer plan yet in England. Hopefully we will soon. I believe there was mention of it last week. we need one so that the cancers that we're interested in today can be put on the table, targets can be set, interventions can be identified, and the government knows where to direct its efforts. The European Beating Cancer Plan, we influenced that by saying we need to include HPV cancers, all HPV cancers, in the European Beating Cancer Plan. We wanted to set targets to raise vaccination rates up to 90%. And in some countries the news is very good. Scotland's very good, Sweden's very good, Ireland's very good. Some other countries are not so good, and that's where we're focusing our attention in the next few years. One of the projects we've got European funding for is called Protect Europe. And as you can imagine, this is a 2-year project, just coming to an end now actually. And we've worked with member states in the European Union, in the eastern part of Europe, where HPV awareness is very low. We've worked with young people, youth organisations, because those are the people who will benefit most from a vaccination programme. And we're including education. We have now a web page, a hub of information. We've worked closely with governments in those countries. I was in the Romanian Parliament when the Minister for Health announced vaccination would be available to boys. And so what that does, working with people up close like that, means that countries do want to be as good as their neighbours. And that is a good way of influencing the work that we're doing. And we can see here we're doing work particularly in Croatia, Romania and Bulgaria. And these countries it's not that long since they were under Russian control. So there is sometimes a hesitancy towards state interventions. And some people need some more persuasion that vaccination in schools, for instance, is a good idea. Many of these countries, you have to go to your GP, you have to get a prescription, you have to take the prescription to your pharmacist, take the vial from the pharmacist to a nurse in order to get vaccination. So it's a very cumbersome process. Whereas in this country, young people are vaccinated at school. So we're trying to promote that approach. That's very alien to some countries who have never done that and never would want to do that. This is just an example of us in Europe talking in the Parliament to various MEPs and ministers, and the Protect Europe is the project I've just been mentioning, about to come to its close. We're applying for a new one, which will look at how we can promote change within political circles. So it's a very interesting part of work, actually, I find, because you've got the science on one side telling us how good it is, and what we need is the action from politicians on the other. One thing I just want to mention is we've been involved in what we call a policy atlas, an HPV policy atlas, and you can see it here on the slide here, and I've got a copy here in person. And for those of you who can't see it, it's a coloured map of Europe. We were involved in developing this atlas, and what it shows in red are the colours that are not doing very well. And it shows in green the countries that are doing very well in terms of HPV vaccination and awareness. And this has been one of the most powerful tools, because countries look at other countries beside them and think, we want to be in the green. We want to improve. So political action can come from very simple visual tools that countries can look at and compare. This is something I think has been extremely useful, and perhaps we need something like this to measure cancer actions here in the UK. I did mention this study This is the Scottish study, this is the report produced by Public Health Scotland in terms of no cervical cancer detected in the 2008 cohort of girls vaccinated. So we don't need much more persuasion that cervical cancer is the same pathogen that's implied that is associated with oropharyngeal cancers. So if we can remove it in that cohort, why can't we remove it in any other cohort being vaccinated so that we can prevent much of the challenges that Chris and other people were describing earlier in terms of once people are diagnosed, the journey then is challenging. But if we can stop that, if we can remove this risk, or at least reduce the risk through a simple process of awareness and vaccination, what's not to like there? So that's my key message today, is we're working in the European scene to make these changes. It's a fascinating area to use the science to persuade politicians to take it on board. We're now in the UK in the process of having the opportunity to expand awareness of HPV vaccination. But individually, on a one-to-one basis, we can make a change in our own families, our own neighbourhoods, our own communities to promote awareness of HPV vaccination and to tell people of the many cancers that can be prevented through that one shot. And it now is a single dose vaccination. That's what WHO Europe now recommend. It used to be 3 jabs, it's now 1, because they found that it's just as effective as 3. We'll find that out, obviously, over the next 20 years, but it's now a single jab. So it's not a high impact on the individual. So just to finish, to tell you, we've got our Protect Europe webinar coming up. There is information on the European Cancer Organisation website. Please do feel free to reach out to us. It's a real honour to be here today and to represent the European Cancer Organisation. We are really very proud of your work, and it shows just how important people getting together, supporting each other and driving change can really be. It really is awe-inspiring, and it's wonderful to be here today to take part in that. So I'm happy to take a few questions if there are any, but just to say a huge thank you for inviting me here today, and I really hope you have a wonderful meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Kelly. I've got a very simplistic question, really, I think, which is how does the vaccine work? Does it actually? So, if somebody already has HPV, does the vaccine actually start to sort of reduce the effect of that? Or specifically, for instance, if you have a male in their mid-20s, late 20s or something like that, who hasn't yet had the vaccine, is it just a question of luck as to whether that person hasn't got the vaccine, hasn't got the HPV virus yet? Do you see what I mean? So if they have the vaccine in, say, their mid-20s, their late 20s, is it just a question of if they're lucky enough not to have had the virus in that time up till then? Does that make sense? Sorry.
It does, but it's a very good question. HPV, there are many types of HPV, and some are known to be associated with cancer, and some are not. Some are more associated with genital warts, which the body can often fight off on its own. But the ones where the HPV strain we're particularly interested in is HPV 16, for your focus here today. And the whole reason for vaccinating young people is to do that before what we call the sexual debut. So Someone once described HPV virus to me a bit like glitter. So it's all around us, and it doesn't need sexual intercourse in order to be passed. It can be quite easily passed. So if we vaccinate young people around 12, 13, then it's highly likely that they will have protection. For people older, it could be that they've been exposed to some HPV strains, but not the dangerous ones. So it's still worth having vaccination. And even I was speaking to a clinician recently about some women with cervical cancer, asking if they should be vaccinated, even once diagnosed. And they advised them, well, why not? Because it could be that there's a strain out there that's mutating, and to have a protective vaccine is not a bad thing. It's not going to cause any problems. But the key, I think, is to protect young people before they're exposed to this virus. And if we do that when they're young, and everybody gets it, so there's no stigma attached to it. The big group who, I think, for people who argue against vaccinating boys, the argument really is you need to protect everyone. There's no point in protecting 50% of the population, because the virus will get into the population if we only protect girls. So that's why we argue for we call it gender neutral vaccination, boys and girls.
Thank you. A related question really, is there consensus on the actual age that boys and girls should be vaccinated, or is it individual assessment, or depending on their relative maturity and the onset of sexual activity?
I think human sexuality is a little bit too complex to say that only starts at age 13 or 15 or 19. We know that it's not as clear as that. So really, if you just have a general vaccination program, and in this country, I think it's around age 12, 11, 12, everybody's offered the vaccine. So whether there's, sexual activity will emerge in teenage years, I'm sure, but it's about if everybody's protected. So there's no magic golden age. We tend to do it before we would think young people would engage in sexual activity. But there are other groups, men who have sex with men, may be highly at risk of this virus, and it can re-enter the population, obviously, that way. And they're at risk of particularly ear cancers, and we know it's going up and up and up in those groups, certainly in the States. So those young men can be vaccinated at any age. In fact, anybody who feels they haven't been protected can request a vaccination. I think sometimes you might have to pay for it, but for young people in this country, it's free.
Professor Kelly, can you, with your experience obviously with the whole area of HPV cancers, can you give some insight as to why, I think it was 7 or 8 years ago, NICE was so resistant to recommending vaccination for boys?
You'd have to ask NICE that. I think the argument is very clear. It's probably an economic argument on their part. They would say that it doesn't make economic sense. That's what you read when you look back at those times. I think the consensus has shifted, and now in the UK it's gender neutral, so boys are offered it. And I think in Scotland, the last figure I heard, around 60% of boys were accepting this vaccine. So there's a cohort who are still not, and there's a cohort of girls, of course, who are not. But I think we will see changes in the cancers that you're interested in impacted in future by a drop in incidence in those boys who are vaccinated now. But sadly, the ones who have not been vaccinated, they are now experiencing the impact of HPV exposure, which is very sad, really. But NICE weigh up all sorts of, it's beyond my pay grade to support that.
Hi, Professor Kay. I was just wondering regarding the cervical cancer, we do 5-year screening in this country, and I think it's purely now looking at HPV. I just wondered if there are any plans that you know of to do screening for oropharyngeal cancers caused by HPV, and whether there'd be a benefit for this if we could help to prevent future HPV-related oropharyngeal cancers.
Yeah, I mean, the screening, the argument for HPV screening in cervical cancer is that it's much more precise than pap smear. Because pap smear, you're waiting for the cellular changes to emerge. Whereas HPV screening, you can tell whether that person has been exposed to HPV in the past. So if somebody's HPV positive, it's much more likely that the screening they will need might need to be more frequent for cervical cancer. Head and neck cancer, I can't really see any reason why the same screening shouldn't be available to people. Certainly those who maybe have never been vaccinated. We can see the incidence for the cancers today are still in the 70 plus age group. So, and the Sheffield study showed that there were lots of factors for that, not just HPV. So poverty, drinking, smoking, etc. So there's a sort of, I think there's a kind of demographic shift possibly towards universal HPV testing. So that, I mean, the Anal Cancer Organization would argue the same thing, that these cancers are very difficult to diagnose, screen. It's very difficult. I know the dentists are helping in terms of looking for oral lesions, but even then it's very difficult to know. So I would have thought an HPV test that could be available in the future, a bit like the HIV test now that you can do with a finger prick, might be a way forward. But then the question is, what do you do with somebody's HPV positive? Do they need to be screened for all these cancers then? So there's a huge economic argument there.
Thank you.
We've got one more from Arthur, I think.
Thanks, Phil. Thank you, Professor Kelly. Great talk. Just a quick one, actually an answer to this gentleman's question. In the United States, we now vaccinated age 9. So we go from 9 to 26, and the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, has just extended it out to age 45. Much to your point, why not get the vaccination? But we basically try to do it before children are sexually active at all, for boys and girls. And that's been a hard push to get that done, but the states have really jumped on that.
I think it's always been a little bit tricky, this idea of vaccinating children against a sexual transmitted virus. It's not an easy argument for some people, but when they understand the risks of later life misery and protecting your young people from that, I think it stands up. So thank you for that. It's great to hear that.
We've time for one more. Just here, Chris, and then just one more.
Sorry. Thank you, Professor Kelly. I just want to know, do you know what the uptake within ethnic minorities is with the HPV vaccination, in particular in England?
I don't know offhand, but I think there is a level of scepticism about vaccination, as we know, since we learned that during COVID. And there are certain groups, from the work we've done in Europe, the Roma community is a good example where they've been very anti-vaccination. They see it as a state-led control, and they want to. So it needs, I think different groups need different interventions. And we mustn't assume that one message up on a slide is going to have the same impact across communities. And for some people, of course, this is a taboo topic. If there was monogamy, this wouldn't be an issue. But, that's one way of looking at a problem. But I always think of it, this is a virus, and it finds its way into people's bodies through different means, and it causes so much damage that why wouldn't we vaccinate? So that's my final point. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was fantastic. That's one of the charities that help try and get our boys vaccinated. I think it's great when we can get people now, youth, coming to talk. My question to you, and I've always wondered, is do we know what the take-up is on vaccines for boys? Because I still hear schools, and no schools are sending out girls' paperwork to a parent that's only got a boy, and then they're saying, well, this isn't for me. So I just wondered, is there any stats on what our take-up has been so that we can go back to the government and say we need to do a campaign?
I think it's various different countries at different levels. So I think Scotland, the last one I saw, was about 70% of boys taking it up. The sad thing is with the boys, they sometimes associate it with men who have sex with men. I think if we remove that from it, it's a human virus, and if we protect everybody, everybody's protected. So we don't target specific groups. I think it would depend even within different regions of England, the uptake. But I think it's a much stronger uptake than it was when it was first, I think, introduced back in 2015. So I think the boys now are just seeing it as a, we need role models, we need it to be all over TikTok and Instagram, and all the things that the young people use. They need people to promote it. And that's the future, I think.
Thank you. Thank you. You're fantastic. Thank you very much. So thanks to Daniel, we are running a little bit before time now, which is unusual for our conferences. We're normally even running over time now. So Daniel, fantastic. You've led the way now for all our other speakers. So I've just got a couple of things. We are doing a raffle. Like I said on my slide, I have no problem taking money out of people's pockets. We can't do what we do without taking money out of your pocket. We've done a raffle last year, and people kept saying, they're like the Queen, they're not the King, they don't take money with them anymore. So I've got a QR code. So there's a QR code, there's a tin. We will take any form of money, checks, I don't care what they are. There's no reason why you can't buy a raffle ticket. If everyone bought a strip of raffle tickets in here, we're going to earn £300. Do more, we earn more. So please, the raffle tickets will be on sale at the stand and around the area. We have, you've all been given a sheet of paper with all the stands' names on. Go around and get it stamped, and somebody, when you go, drop them into the reception area, and someone's going to win a £50 voucher, an Amazon voucher, just for going on the stand and getting a stamp. If you don't get them all stamped, you're not in the draw. You're only in the draw if everyone is stamped, and all the stamps are different. So no cheating. Don't ask Emma, because she's a nice girl on Riz, please give me 2 stamps, because it won't work, they'll be disregarded. They are all different stamps. But like I said right at the beginning, guys, these guys pay for this, so at least go on the stand, have a chat with them and get your paper stamped. Someone's going to win a £50 voucher. If you don't want it, we'll have it back and then we'll raffle it again. So don't worry about that. So we have got a bit of time before we're on time. Yes. So I'm going to introduce, I'm not going to say a lot of words because as you see I get told off, so I'm going to introduce Andrew, who's going to chair the next session. He'll tell you all about it. Andrew, would you like to come on stage and have a word? He's also going to talk at the end about support groups. So wait for that as well.
Thanks, Chris. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name's Andrew Hyde. My wife and I have the honour to lead the Lincolnshire support group, but I know there are other support groups represented here today. It's my great pleasure and privilege now to introduce Kathleen Watt, author of Rearranged, an opera singer's facial cancer and life transposed. Kathleen sang principal roles with the Boston Lyric Opera, Utah Opera Company, Springfield Regional Opera, and others, and in the extra chorus of New York's Metropolitan Opera, before her singing career was summarily ended by osteogenic sarcoma, bone cancer, in her face. Since retiring from performing, she's written frequently on performing arts and cultural issues, including features, profiles, and essays. As a writer and cancer survivor, Kathleen has collaborated with doctors and artists on a range of projects, including an appearance on BBC4 in a series about facial disfigurement. Formerly an assistant art director in publishing, Kathleen attended Rhode Island School of Design, Brown University and Brigham Young University, earning a double BFA in art and music, with postgraduate studies in opera performance at Boston University. Kathleen now writes from a windswept hay farm in the Catskill Mountains of New York, where she resides with her partner, 6 chickens, 3 dogs, and, on occasion, her 2 grown stepchildren. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kathleen Watt.
Let me just make sure I know this. There. So thank you, Andrew, for that introduction. And I want to thank especially Chris and Sharon for introducing me to the Swallows. What a wonderful group, and all that you all are doing. And for extending to me the opportunity to participate in the 2024 Head and Neck Cancer Conference here in Sheffield. I'm grateful also for this opportunity to introduce to you my recently published memoir called Rearranged, An Opera Singer's Facial Cancer and Life Transposed. It describes my one-time operatic career, how it was hijacked by bone cancer in my face, how I made it through and out the other side, and all the interesting things that happened on the way. In fact, there are a variety of ways into my story. There's the magic of ex-opera singer book, the cancer survivor theme, the cancer caregivers, very important story, and family themes, intergenerational themes that weave throughout. I know some of you, many of you here are healthcare practitioners. Maybe some are musicians. Many of you have faced or are facing serious health challenges yourselves, particularly critical head and neck conditions. And certainly everyone will have the opportunity to be a patient and or a caregiver at one time or another throughout our lifetimes. So most of all, in my remarks today, I hope to demonstrate not that my own story is particularly unique, but that human experience always is both unique and universal. My book is entitled Rearranged, which can pertain to decorating and furniture, as in rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, say. It's also a musical term. Rearranged means the adjustment of an orchestration or an accompaniment to fit a tune to changed circumstances. As for example, when a score written for an orchestra of some 110 musicians is rearranged for half that many due to wartime scarcity of instruments and or instrumentalists. Or for example, when in a Handel oratorio, the aria for soprano, which is the highest female voice, is sung by a baritone, the lower male voice. Or vice versa, that would require a rearrangement. So, Rearranged is perfect for my book, in that it recounts the saga of bone cancer in my face, which was discovered during the time that I was singing at the Metropolitan Opera in New York. Of the ways it exploded the carefully curated pieces of my life, and about how the pieces eventually fell together again, rearranged, but ultimately becoming whole. So, how does anyone hear the news of a devastating illness like cancer. A diagnosis of cancer fills even the strongest of the strong with fear and trembling. So how do we face it? And how do we get to the point where we say, okay, go ahead, cut this out of me. Get this cancer out of me, just do whatever you have to do. Especially when doing so, you know that your body self, your face, your voice, or your identifying features will most likely be changed forever. Is this courage? Or is this hubris? Am I asking too much? Am I minding my stewardship? Or am I forsaking it? And then, for the fortunate, comes a moment when we understand that we'll probably make it through after all. And what can we do with this? How do we absorb this life after death? Is it a gift? Is it a curse? So I want to revisit for a moment the process that we as patients encounter when cancer or any other barbaric threat to existential selfhood jumps out in front of us as we're blithely wending our way along life's path. You find your life hijacked, rerouted through an unknown wilderness where deep shadows cloak you in existential dread every day. You're expected to abdicate your agency and trust your future, your body, your very being to strangers who seem to know everything about everything except you. Time and space are suspended. All the markers you've ever created and trusted to guide you through lose their meaning. You lose your bearings. You feel you are not you, but you don't know who you are. For myself, with very few options and a sense that my future was mostly unknowable anyway, I opted not to resist, but to try to face it, to prepare for my trip through Cancerland, as though for a marvelous adventure, or as I might for a new operatic role, often arduous, the unknown for most of it, grueling even, but crowded with wonders and well worth it. I do think that's how I made it through. I know I exerted an intention to stay present for whatever might develop. And I found, to tell you the truth, there was hardly any part of my own cancer experience that was not at least interesting. For example, imagine my surprise when my life led me from this to this. Craniofacial osteogenic sarcoma. I was a career opera singer in New York when I was diagnosed with bone cancer, right in the middle of my residence chambers, right in the middle of the Metropolitan Opera season. In fact, because fate loves to mock us, I think, on the very day that I was scheduled for an important audition at the Met, I instead was scheduled to present myself to the operating room for a 17-hour surgery to extract a golf ball-sized tumor from the sinus space behind my cheekbone. Until then, I had been privileged to sing some of opera's most exciting principal roles in smaller opera companies like Carmen in Salt Lake City or Sieglinde in Boston. I could really warm to the role of diva every once in a while. But when I sang at the Metropolitan Opera as a member of the extra chorus, my role was more all-purpose, as you can see here in this spectacular finale from Turandot at the Metropolitan Opera by Puccini. You can see there I am. There. The one with the hat. But of course, as in all job descriptions, opera singer itself is a role, a fantastic role, a role that I loved, large or small, on stage or backstage, where a whole different kind of drama takes place. And sometimes even under the stage, it creates one special effect or another, an indoor choir singing to the people outside in the square, for example. That's one of the most important functions of an extra chorus member. But that's who I was then. I was hijacked by cancer and rerouted into the thick of hospital life, where I would have been grateful for a few pointers, like these, perhaps. Critical illness is not a hiatus from your life. As satisfying as that may be, to think you'll steel yourself for the duration of the illness and return to life undisturbed, it doesn't really work that way. Rather, you are on the path of your life, even as it now veers through a brutally unexpected landscape of critical illness toward another place entirely. And you may be changed for it. For myself, I more or less decided as I might as well show up for my life, intentionally, since I had to be there anyway. Likewise, you are not your illness. That is, if it should happen that the path of your life traverses the land of, say, cancer, you will be you as before, but you will be you going through cancer. And you'll be surprised to discover how many ways you're already prepared by your experience of being you to date to meet the challenges that are still ahead. Also, know that you are, as a patient, are a crucial component of your care team. Physicians and surgeons especially can seem sacrosanct in their expertise and their unassailable command of everyone around them. But you are the expert on you. As such, you're an invaluable consultant to the team. So many details about you that only you know, idiosyncrasies, references, histories, which reside with you, and only you can illuminate. In fact, the best doctors, medical teams, need your consultation in order to wield their massive skills effectively. That is, in a way that uniquely targets you. Thus, it becomes important to recall to ourselves who we are. For example, I was an opera singer. I loved playing my role as an opera singer, and I had it down to a system. For every audition, I offered the same 8x10 headshot. I wore the same flattering silk dress. I never imagined that very soon I would have to trade my glossy headshots for CT scans of my skull and my audition dress for a hospital gown. For my new role, starring in my own life as the patient. My cancer saga rolled through many more scenes, sets, and costume changes than we could possibly have expected at the outset. But we tried to play every scene to the hilt, whether escaping my I think I have a thing here, escaping my hospital room in the wee hours to have an impromptu sock hop in the atrium with my partner Evie, or embracing my new fashion accent, my little black patch. But we still had a lot of leftover pieces. By great good fortune, my bone cancer was effectively addressed and treated, and within 3 years, I was NED, no evidence of disease. I was cancer-free. So there would be a sequel. My facial reconstruction took a while longer, but eventually I was able to fully inhabit my survivorship. Imagine my surprise then, and my joy, to discover I could still make music, albeit with sentences, and that I would thrill to find the shape of a lyrical sentence, as I had once thrilled to unfurl a cascade of silvery sound. You will be changed. So the sojourn in the land of illness really is not a hiatus, but a life path leading from where we were to what comes next. You will be changed, of course, but you'll be you, the new you. You'll be a survivor, stepping into your own future, the richer for how you came here. Which seems to me like a great time to begin preparing for your next adventure. It's already waiting for you, the new you, no matter how rearranged your pieces may be. And now, just to share a taste of rearranged, I'd like to read an excerpt from chapter 59 called Honey, I'm a Monster. Any ordinary day in the hospital presents a constant stream of potential offenses and opportunity to trespass personal boundaries. One day, in the wide-open multi-bed recovery room, subdivided by wavy walls of striped muslin, as I lay half reclining in a disoriented haze, one low, confidential sentence rose to my ears above the racket of skittering curtain hooks. Honey, I'm a monster. I looked over to see the silhouette of a tall figure backlit by a fluorescent bed lamp, half hidden by the partitions between his cubicle and mine. He cupped the mouthpiece of a hospital phone close to his face, but I heard it. Hollow-throated, suppressed, that sentence breaking into a dry sob. His long torso buckled on the thin edge of a hospital bed. My eyes stung with his complaint, knowing neither the extent of his deformity nor to whom he spoke. Then I remembered my own disfigurement, and I had the time to lie there thinking about it. When a patient loses his face to a predator like the Big C, he may feel prey to the surgeon's blade himself, even as the blade saves his life with a deft slice at his tumor, the tumor, and any features in the way. What's left of me now, he may think. Who am I anymore? Or I might as well be dead. Psychologist Nicola Romsey, officer of the British Empire, founder of the Centre for Appearance Research at the University of West England, writes, disfigurement is initially a sort of bereavement, followed by a tremendous, almost overwhelming sense of inadequacy and isolation. The battle for life may be waged in the craniofacial operating theater, but not won in any conclusive sense. It continues into the tracheostomy ward, where the challenge is to rally patients like us, rescued from the brink of death, to take up devastated lives most of us are woefully unprepared to face. All that can be done has been done, and now we're disease-free. We're ugly, no longer dying, just ugly, ugly for life. As the drama of the life or death crisis subsides with recovery, the disease-free patient's road back is not only grueling but also lonely. For scant prior experience prepares a patient to face what memoir Lucy Greeley described as the deep, bottomless grief called ugliness. People fall apart in lots of ways, of course, but when the wreckage is in the face, restoration to any meaningful aliveness depends as much upon a surgeon's shamanistic insights and the quality of the adjunct services as upon mere scalpel or stitch. Quote, "The disfigured face is the most public of all faces, always on display, such that disfigurement may come to define a person's whole existence and persona," writes neurophysiologist Jonathan Cole. It is no comfort to know psychologists study disfigurement under a clinical entity called the Quasimodo complex. Quasimodo, the deeply empathic hunchback of Notre Dame, of whom Victor Hugo wrote, "There is nowhere on earth a more grotesque creature." The human predilection for pleasing harmonies, even as experience everywhere veers toward disharmony, is universal and not unique to our own exhibitionist age. Thus, from the golden age of Greece to the golden age of Hollywood, beauty is virtue by equivalence. From Leonardo's Vitruvian Man to the Cosmo cover girl to social media, physical beauty in the shape of its times signifies all to everyone all that is good and devoutly to be wished. In the United States of the gay 90s, for example, that is gay 1890s, there arose an architectural reform movement called the City Beautiful, proposing to advance moral and civic virtue through municipal planning and urban beautification. Accordingly, many American cities also passed ugly laws, some of which remained on the books throughout the Nixon administration in the 1970s. They went something like this: any person who is diseased, maimed, mutilated, or in any way deformed, so as to be an unsightly or disgusting presence, shall not therein or thereon expose himself or herself to public view. The more magnanimous municipalities designated discrete areas of color-coded blue benches for any such persons who might wish to take the air. The archetypes by which we measure each other and ourselves have deep roots which do not die back within mere decades of disability theory or adventurist portraiture, think Francis Bacon. Even in 2005, the New York Times could cite Canadian research of the time, concluding that, quote, "parents take better care of pretty children than they do of ugly ones." The same New York Times article quotes a churlish scientist spinning outdated Darwinism, quote, "There are a lot of things that make a person more valuable. And physical attractiveness may be one of them. Long after surgical improvements, one facially deformed man reported, "I find myself so unattractive that I feel I should not be there, mixing with others. I feel as if I'm letting them down. I get nervous, and that makes them nervous, and I give out bad vibes." For a time after my own cancer surgeries, I felt as bereft of myself as I was of my voice. I could scribble my needs on my tracheostomy scribble pad, issuing updates from behind my mask of stitches and steri strips. But my face was unable to deliver the myriad mini movements that orchestrate our words, giving them life and personal meaning, identity. And I missed seeing my reflection in the faces of others. I began to lose track of my own subtexts. I began to lose track of myself. Of course, some form of mask had always been required. Come on, smile! Kind of smarmy tip from men, especially, has hounded women forever. It's an indictment and a veiled rebuke, however innocuous its intent. On a theory that shapelier eyebrows might fix me, I sprang for my first tweezer at 13. Sadly, my neutral expression has always been one of unladylike glowering, moody, preoccupied, disqualifying, to be honest. Come on, smile, it can't be that bad. This disarming comeuppance, always surprising and undermining and infantilizing. In Bodily Charm, by authors Linda and Michael Hutchin, they write about the corporeal aspects of operatic singing. Singing not only demands top physical condition, but also top psychological condition. The psychic state of the singer on stage, open to intense public scrutiny and competition, is of crucial importance, and that psychological state often has physical manifestations. For example, when I sang the role of Sieglinde by Wagner in the American provinces, I applied myself to the role with all my might. The love scene, the mad scene, the shadowed Norse gestalt. I was totally into it. My naturalistic performance moved one influential critic to opine, "This soprano is a beautiful woman, but she kept making awful faces, perhaps for vocal technical reasons, perhaps for inappropriately exaggerated acting ones." I read the review in the morning paper while I was strap hanging to my day job as a bank teller, as I felt every neck on the train crane to watch my world implode. It was all I could do not to wrap my burning face in the Boston Globe. Within days, however, that review was answered by a personal letter from a Wagnerite who knew me only by this performance. Quote, "The critic's remarks remind me of my wife's father, who tells her she is not very attractive when she is angry. Many years earlier, my own father had scalded me with the same reproach. But in an instant, this nosegay from a stranger soothed not only my performer's ego, but also my own old wound. When my tears spilled onto the page, I discovered how long I had been craving redress. Of the mad scene, in which I was particularly expressive, the violinist in the pit, the first violinist in the orchestra, said to me, "I don't understand German, but when my aunt began to hallucinate with her dimension, she looked exactly like you up there, so I figured The opera company contract called for a second round of performances in New York City. I had less than a week to pull myself together and reprise the very same role where the stakes would be even higher. I had mere days to hurt, to heal, and to reclaim my battered self-image. To relearn to love my face, the organ of my own expression. I had to know what I knew and be who I was, awful, inappropriate, or exaggerated. To follow through as I was, I would have to locate a definition of beauty for myself to ferry me forward, whatever storms may howl. My New York performance was in fact rewarded with a round of soul-soothing huzzas, and at least one critic found my Sieglinde best of all. Now, lying abed under a welter of tubes and heavy dressings, my face an unsightly mashup of what it used to be and was yet to become, under the weight of this neighbor patient's sorrow, despair, and my own. Something gentler began to surface. Nothing substantial, only a little something to hold on to, like a bobbing float in the chop. Simply a sense that we are not monsters, no matter what we read in the papers. I thank you for your attention. I think we have some time for some questions.
Any questions?
Yes. So, thank you. I'm over here. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah. In the dark. Thank you very much for your very personal and very powerful story. I think we all hugely appreciate you sharing it. It was inspirational. My question is, in your photos, you showed a picture of when you had escaped into your hospital corridor with Evie. You're wearing a gown.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So who took that picture and how did you escape?
How did I escape? Well, I had a wonderful care group. I have two sisters, and my partner at the time, who is now my publicist, were very attentive. And as anybody on hospitalization knows, time passes in 4-hour segments, so shift changes, and we're often awake in the wee hours of the morning, and sleeping during the day. And the one who took the picture was one of my sisters. And the one in the picture with me is my publicist right here. And we escaped because there was nobody, we were between shift changes, and it was 3 a.m. And we were all fully awake, and I needed some exercise. They're in mismatched socks. I'm sure we weren't supposed to be there, but it did fortify me in the moment, and I was well taken care of.
Come on, don't be shy. Anyone else?
Professor.
Kathleen, thank you so much for, I think, very powerful insights into the minutiae of the way that your life has been impacted, but also full of positivity and learning. Can you tell me now, what's your relationship now with music? Do you use it? Do you find solace there, or?
I was pretty much timed out of a career in operatic singing, and because of cascading complications over 10 years. One of my cords was paralyzed for a period of time, and my hyoid was out of position. So no, but music is still in me. I sing for myself. I sing, in the shower when I'm harvesting the garden. But more importantly, and I'm asked this question, I think with the expectation that that I miss music, that I miss what I was. And the great revelation to me was that the singing that I was doing, and opera and orchestral music as a practice, was more a materialization of a common central lyricism that I was then able to find in writing. And I thought, well, I've got something else to do, but I was very surprised to find how much of that same impulse of finding the right shape to express exactly what I mean to express was very common among the arts. Before I was an opera singer, I went to art school and I was a painter. So, and it's very common, the wellspring of what manifests in a series of other ways. Could be baking, could be gardening. For me, it's art and music, and it is, I think, the more powerful and satisfying and effective for having been a singer. And I think that is a metaphor also for illness, in that I would frankly rather be me now with the densely textured experience of having had critical illness than I was before, than to be me before. So thanks for that question.
Thank you very much.
So great is your experience. Actually, I'm a surgeon myself, and it would be a learning from you. I just wanted to know that what are expectations, or what do you expect? Like, we know we are doing our work. I'm a head and neck surgeon only, and so I was just listening to you, and I want to know, like, what is the, like, where do we need to connect with the patient? Where like, I understand, do we need to connect more? Do we need to be more empathetic? Like, what is your take on that? Just learn
for caregivers?
For caregivers and the patients both. I think caregivers also need a lot of empathy because they suffer on both the sides.
Oh, I have many notes on caregiving that I plan to pull together in some sort of way that is helpful and evocative, because there's no way to survive without caregivers. But what I noticed, I'll tell you just one thing because I could go on. The caregiver with the best intentions can sometimes make the biggest mistake. When I think the one fundamental thing that a caregiver can do is to try to put themselves in the position of the patient. May be difficult to do because the impact of illness is so foreign unless you've been through critical illness, and also because the caregiver or the physician knows different things about the illness, about the experience of this patient being ill than the patient is experiencing. However, if it's at all possible to take the time and focus fundamentally on trying to see what the patient needs or is talking about, you can head off a lot of problems that might arise. For example, I was in an induced coma for a long time and on a trach when I came out, so I was nonverbal and I was also not thinking very straight. For a long time, I struggled. From the moment I became conscious, I was struggling to understand what was happening around me. Of course, I'm also very nearsighted, and no one thought to bring me my glasses. And all of my other senses were altered also by medications and various problems. But one of my, so that's the set, that I'm setting the scene. One of my most tormenting experiences were these two women who stood at the end of my room. I thought they were caregivers, and I decided that they were social workers waiting, watching to see how I was coming along, when it would be the right time to come in and give me their spiel. And but they were there every time I opened my eyes, every single time, just sitting there gossiping with each other like this, leaning into their arms on this half wall at the end of my room. And I could see them in their pastel sweaters, blue, Angora, and pink. And I agonized over what it was that I could possibly doing that offended them so. I lay there in the bed thinking, what, don't they have anything better to do? What does it do for them to stand there criticizing me? Come on, I'm sick, I'm lying here, I'm trying to do my best. Well, one day, my sister remembered to bring me my glasses, and I saw that at the end of the room, on the shelf, it was about this high, were two vases of wilting bouquets. Now browning, but it was clear where the Angora sweater came from. And I had spent a week with self-criticism, trying to figure out what it was that I was doing wrong, what I could do better, how to be a better patient. What the heck are they being so mean for? But if anybody had thought to come around to where I was, my point of view, where my sight line was, and my caregivers, my sisters and everybody who cared for me, very, very insightful, empathic, and they know me well. Still, none of them in their best intentions it never occurred to them to come around and see what I was talking about. Because I would scratch on my pad. Who are they? What are they doing? What's their problem? And my caregivers I could hear them. They were saying things like, "Oh, wow, she's really not tracking. She's really out of it." Oh. And dismissed me. I watched them dismiss me. But if they had come around where I was, they would have been able to say, "Those are your flowers." And I realized that as soon as I got my glasses. So that kind of thing happens, I think, in the caregiving dynamic. Because you want to do the best, try so hard, and really, you have to be an inquisitive. You have to be a curious caregiver. And find out where your patient is before applying, your many crucial skills. That helps.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kathleen. Out of time on questions, but are you around for the rest of the day as well?
I'm around for the rest.
Yeah, so please do ask your questions during the day. Andrew,
Thank you.
Some final words?
Thank you, Kathleen, for that wonderful talk. And also, thank you for the wonderful book. I had the good fortune that I was emailed a copy, not a hard copy, obviously, in advance a couple of weeks ago. I've already read about 40% of it, and it's really good. It hooks you in, particularly if you've been on a cancer journey yourself. Because there was so much in there that I thought, yeah, I can identify with that. But sometimes, but it was telling it from a different perspective. and I could have identified had I seen it from that perspective. So I highly recommend to read it, and I'm looking forward, now I've got a hard copy, to concluding my reading. Chris has asked me to mention about the group leads. As I said at the beginning, my wife Jo and I are the group leads for Lincolnshire. But there are other group leads here, and we're hoping at some time during the 2 days to get the group leads together, because we don't very often get the chance to meet and to talk. So look out for that one. It also may be interesting to anybody who lives in an area or works in an area where there are no groups currently, but would be interested in having some sort of input in setting one up. That doesn't mean you get the full responsibility. To do so, you really need somebody who's a patient and or caregiver, and also somebody in the hospital environment who would be supporting it. And we're very grateful to have 2 of our team from Lincoln here with us today. Lovely to see you. And finally, Chris asked me to say, if there's Suzanne Magnuson in the audience there, can you make contact with Chris or Sharon when you get an opportunity to do so? Okay, that concludes the session. Thank you so much. Thank you.